name is Gail Carr. I'd like to welcome Peter Cofran here. Thank you, Peter, for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is going to be a fun tour down memory lane because it just will, because I know a lot of people will be interested to hear your fabulous stories that you have to tell.
And some that I can't.
And some that would be appropriate to just let go and just smile. So I know you came as a student first before you
Correct.
started working here. So why don't you start with that in the years and tell from there what you proceeded to do.
Sure. I went to Pembroke Academy, the public high school down in Pembroke and Allenstown, and our basketball team always came up here at Christmas to play in the Plymouth basketball tournament that was held down in Silver Hall, which was a gymnasium. So for 3 years I got accompanied to that. I came up here in, I think, October of '68. They had orientation day. I remember Al Wanslack was one of our guides, and we had a nice tour of the campus and everything, and he told us some of the stuff that went on around the Halloween time period. And then back at Pembroke, we had about 12 faculty members who had graduated either from Plymouth Teachers College or Plymouth State College when it became that, and our principal was Bill Marston, who had graduated from here. So it's just a sort of easy transition up here. I can remember coming across the railroad tracks with my mother, and my mother saying, you don't have to come home every weekend, you understand. Well, by my senior year, she was saying, you're going to come home for Christmas. So it's that type of family atmosphere that I found up here. And Mrs. Johnson was a house mother in Grafton Hall, and she was a wonderful, wonderful lady. And on the Halloween activities that particular year, the Grafton Hall was struck, and she got on the PA system and told everybody not to let any water go into the lounge, clean everything up, and then you may go do your own thing. And so that was, like, again, the type of atmosphere back there. I was a 5-year student here before it was popular. I was very fortunate. I've always felt very fortunate in my professional life. I was always in the right place at the right time. I got to be on the student house committee in Grafton Hall. Charlie Wood and Jim Triacker and Mrs. Johnson are our dorm supervisors. I got to be an RA. I got $32 a week, which was really good back then. Then I was able to move up. I got involved in student government. I was involved in the radio station and was general manager of that. I was fortunate to be elected student body president in 1973.
Long hair.
And long hair, nice big beard. My graduation picture in the yearbook is still something I'm proud of. And again, I was in the right place at the right time. I'd gone to Interlakes to be a student teacher, and the week before my student teaching was supposed to start, the teacher asked me if I was going to be shaving off my beard, and I said, why? And she said, well, that's unprofessional. I'm a firm believer, it's not who you know, but it's who knows you. I came back up here, it was a Tuesday, I went right to Dean Smith's office, talked to him. He said, let's go across the hall. We went to Phil Tapley's office, Director of Student Teaching, who also happened to be the school board chair in Plymouth. 2 days later, I was moved to Plymouth, and I became a student teacher up there. A week later, Chuck Lenahan came and saw me and said, Pete, would you be interested in coaching girls softball? I'll give you $130. Okay, sounded good to me, and that was just another thing. I then was able to be the hall dorm supervisor for 3 years, which was a great experience working with the young men over there in a little bit of a transition period after the Vietnam War, and some of the social issues were going on back then. 2 years later, the college apartments opened up, and I went over there for the first 2 years as a college manager over there. And it was our desire over there. In Hall Dorm, we put out a weekly newspaper, the Hall Street Journal. So when we went over to the apartments, we wanted to do some different things over there too, so we came up with a city council, but we wanted to come up with a name for it, just like we had the Hall Street Journal. What could we come up with over at the student apartments? And we came up with, in all honesty, innocently enough, we came up with Students in Nature. And the acronym was SIN. So we had Sin City, Students in Nature. Well, Dick Hage wasn't too impressed with that, but it's something that stuck. And if the police, campus police, town fire department, if they have, oh, we've got to go to Sin City. So
Everybody knew where to go.
exactly, everybody knew where it was, and it was just students in nature because of the bears and whatnot. So I was there for 2 years. Then one night, after I left there, I've been in the fire department for a couple of years, and I heard on the scanner around 3 in the morning, Mike Landrock, who's the police chief at that time, on the radio. So I saw him the next day, and he said, we just don't have enough people to work. So I said, well, I'd be interested. So that night, I started working campus police with no real quote-unquote training, other than I knew that at campus. And I did that for 5 years, 6 years, excuse me. And I also got involved with the town auxiliary police at that time. And I was substitute teaching up at the high school. I was coaching girls basketball and girls softball. And then in 1983, I just wasn't making enough money to pay the electric bill, actually. And so I went to the high school, and they said they could give me $500 more. I then went down to the fire department and spoke to Chief Sleeper, and he said, because I knew that a firefighter was resigning that evening to go to Nashua, and I said, geez, Chief, I might be interested in the position. He said, you would be? I said, yeah. He said, well, you have been in the department for about 8 years. Next morning at 10 past 8, he called me and said, Pete, you start next Monday. So again, right place, right time. I worked there for a year, and then the equipment manager position opened up at Plymouth State College, and I was fortunate to get that job. And I remember to this day, and I use it, one of the questions that I was sort of asked was, I'm looking for someone to run the facility with me. Would you be interested? And that word with has stuck with me forever, because when I had the different student workers at the PE center or down at the Newfound where I finished up, it was always with me, with me, with me. And it was 9:30 at night, and on a Saturday night, I was older, so I wanted to get home. The college students wanted to go out on a Saturday night and enjoy themselves. So if they saw me pushing in the bleachers, they get right over there and help me with it. The second day in the job, the athletic director at the time was John Clark, and he came up to me and said, Pete, did I tell you you're also the assistant athletic director? I went, no. He says, okay, we'll work on that in January. So then in January, I became the assistant athletic director. And then over the course of my 23 years down there, I was director of summer conferences for about 10 years, in addition to the role there, facility coordinator, home events coordinator. For 3 months in 1999, I was asked to be the interim alumni director. So I was the interim alumni director in Russell House, and that's the only time from 1984 to 2019, when I just retired from Newfound, that I had windows in my office. So that was a great thing. And then in 2007, I saw an ad in the paper that said anticipated AD opening at Newfound. I called up the athletic director, Kelly Carey, who had worked for me as a student worker back in the 84, 85 time frame, and her son was on my grandson's Little League baseball time in 2007. And I just gave her a ration of grief. You haven't told me anything about this. We've been friends, my son and my grandson, your son. You couldn't say anything. She's laughing and whatnot. She said, would you be interested? I said, no, I'm happy at Plymouth State. She said, oh, they'd love you down here. Well, there was a TV show back in our day, Gilligan's Island. Well, 5 hours later, I went down for a 2-hour tour. When I walked out the door, I said, that's my next job. And I got it, got right back into dealing with the high school kids. When I got done coaching in 2004, I just missed that contact that I had. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself at Newfound. And then in 2018, in July, I just said to myself, it's time. So I let them know at that point, and I retired June 30th of 2019. No regrets professionally whatsoever. I was in the right place at the right time, and very, very fortunate.
What type of responsibilities accompanied your various positions? Because you kind of did most everything there was to do. You kind of had your hand in it.
I did, and I think that's the
special standout that was.
I think that's just the type of person I am. I mean, in Hall Dorm, we had the infamous Thursday night fundraising activities for different groups on campus down in a little theater, and that was always a challenge. I think one of the things is I have a little magnet that says sarcasm is just another service I provide. And I hadn't realized it until I got that, but I think that's how I've always dealt. I think I've been upfront with people. I've told them where things are. The students were always understanding to me. I mean, back in the day when you know, there was a lot of smoking in residence halls and whatnot. We had a nice understanding that if they were gonna be doing any smoking, they weren't gonna do it in the building, or there would be consequences. The students appreciated that, because I was being honest with them. I wasn't trying to give them a hard time or whatever, and that, I think, parlayed into better things for everybody. Over in the student apartments, we had a lot of issues over there. When we first moved in, not every apartment had refrigerators, not every apartment had stoves, but it allowed the students over there to get to know each other. And the apartments were pretty much male, female, male, female, so I think that helped us keep any potential issues under control, because the apartments got to know everybody because they had to. You know, yeah, can I come over and get this? So that made things there. At the Peace Center, I'd always been involved in athletics, and again, I've always worked. I mean, it's not a 9 to 3 job or something like in the athletic world. It's when you get there in the morning at 8 until you get done at 10 or 11, and it's Saturdays and it's Sundays. And I think the students and staff, I think, realized that that was the type of person I was, and it was just always, it was never unenjoyable to go to work. We hosted a lot of events down there. We hosted the NHIAA basketball tournaments for many, many years. We'd have 28 games over a 3-weekend time period. We'd put 15,000 people in that time frame. The concessions always went to the athletic department. People got to know us. The student workers, I explained to them that they were ambassadors of Plymouth State, so they always dressed appropriately with a nice NHIAA shirt, and then either beige or pants or black sweatpants. They were always visible. What can I do for you? How can I help you? If a person with a disability came in, they were there before the person could even get to the door. And I think that resonated throughout the state of New Hampshire. And putting 14,000 people through there, that's a great tool to recruit for students to come here, particularly with so many Class M and S schools at the time, Division 3 and 4 now, that they weren't really sure, but they come down here as, you know, 7th and 8th graders, and they walk into Foley Gymnasium, so, wow, look at this is so much bigger than our gym, and they got into the games, they excited, so then 4 or 5 years later, just like myself, when I went to Silver Hall at Christmas, they knew Plymouth State, so they wanted to come here. 2007, I think that dropped off, and now we only have like 6 games a year with the NHIAA. In my opinion, that's unfortunate, because we lost the North Country and the smaller schools coming here. The Division I athletes were not going to get anyway, but a lot of the Division III and Division IV athletes, they were coming here. Tony Martinez from Pittsfield, Jamie Hayes from over the Newmarket area, you know, from the different areas, and those are the things that I think that time changes, and I think that's something that we're missing.
And if I recall correctly, you used to have a license plate that people always knew who it was.
I still have that license plate, and I would continually ask the business manager if they would pay for my car registration, because it was promoting Plymouth State College.
That's
because
right.
The initials are PSC. Many people don't realize those are actually my initials.
Right.
And I can remember Julie Bernier, she'd been here 8 years, and she saw me, Pete, I just realized, she said, your middle initial is S. I said, yep. So again, right place, right time. It was just another little thing about Pete Cofran that stuck out, shall we say, because those were the college's initials.
Yeah. Was there anyone at Plymouth State that had an influence on you, either when you first arrived or over time? You worked with a lot of different people and people that made their own mark on Plymouth State.
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And the first one I remember is Al Wanslack, because he's the one who gave us the tour the year before. Well, ironically, when I came as a freshman, I was in 319 Grafton, Al was in 321. Al was a partier.
Yeah.
And so the first night he invites us over to party and whatnot, and my father was a lawyer and a judge, so I didn't get into that drinking stuff. So he said, no, I said, I just drink orange soda, so thank you though. Next day he calls me in and he says, Pete, come here. Opens up his refrigerator, he said, there's some orange soda, there'll always be orange soda there for you. And that has always stayed with me. Charlie Wood was, well, Mrs. Johnson obviously as a house mother, then Charlie Wood as a residence director. He went on to be a student trustee from here. I remember obviously Jim Smith, Dr. Hyde and I got real close because being student body president, I had the opportunity to meet with him on a regular basis. Then my business teacher was Joanne Payne, and that was the first class I had. Every morning was I had shorthand with Miss Horace, and then I went into Joanne Payne's class for some other technical type stuff. And I still say to this day, the best class I ever had in my life was typing.
Yes.
Because of the fact that until my present principal at Newfound 2015, no supervisor could ever type. They could pick and pack, but nobody could type. And I was always able to type, not the world's fastest, but that was definitely the best class. I remember Dave Kent's law classes down on the second floor at Silver Hall. Cliff Hillier was a business teacher that was there. Dayton Spalding, he was the basketball coach. He was also the swim instructor when I came in 1969. And I had swimming class, third or fourth period, and I went up to him, I said, gee, are you looking for a basketball manager? He said, yes, and I got involved with the basketball team for 4 years. Again, right place, right time. And I sometimes think that students don't ask questions, and by asking, you at least get your name out there. John Clark, obviously, he and I knew each other back when we were in school in student government, and his daughter played softball for me at the high school. He was my boss for 20 years, so as director of athletics. And then Dr. Barbara Blaha. She was English professor, and in 1995-96, when we celebrated our 125th anniversary, she and I were the co-chairs. And it was just a great time, and we had a lot of good stuff. I think the campus bought into it, the staff bought into it, the students bought into it, and we just thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. And then I guess subsequent to that, the many student workers that I had, because there have been 14 student workers of mine from Plymouth State that became athletic directors in the state of New Hampshire. And that made me feel good, and they'll always come back and talk about, well, you taught us about this with the tournaments, we had a soccer game, and that just told me a couple things. One, they listened, and they learned, and evidently what they learned has helped them in the professional world. So that makes me feel good.
During the time you were at Plymouth, what major changes did you see, or enhancements, or even problems that you encountered?
Belknap became a co-ed dorm. So not that it wasn't before it became one, but that's a. But yeah. But I don't know. I think that Hyde Hall was built, and that was back in 1977, and I can remember. In fact, I just got a picture from Ken Williams, a former student body vice president, when I was president, of the meeting that Kenny and I, Patty Miller, Alan Bridle, had down in Governor Thompson's office. We went down representing Plymouth State to try to convince the governor and others that the need for Hyde Hall was necessary. And we're very fortunate that it was accepted, and we got what we now know of as Hyde Hall. When we first came here, the high school was where the Hartman Union building is. So that whole thing changed. That went up to the high school, and then Memorial Building, Spear, and the Hartman Union were redesigned to become more of a student center. The administrative offices went into Spear from Russell House, where they had been, and the Hartman Union building came about, and which I think was a great asset to the majority of the campus who may not have been athletes. They'll go there, play basketball. That's where the mailroom eventually became the snack bar. The first pub, and probably the only pub on campus upstairs there, and it was just a way to talk with people away from the cafeteria. I think the cafeteria has grown leaps and bounds since we were here back in the 70s, because back then you basically had one choice. And every Friday night it was spare ribs or macaroni and cheese. And that, I think, is the reason I don't eat spare ribs anymore. I never got into tearing the meat off that. But now there's 8 or 9 different choices. So I think salad bar, the vegetarian type stuff. So I think they've done a nice job over there improving things. I think Boyd Hall has been upgraded a couple of times. And then obviously physical plant moving away from memorial down to the old Fred Medore dealership. That gave, I think, a lot more respect from the campus to physical plant, and made the physical plant employees feel prouder because now they had their own place. They could go there, they could have lunch or whatever it was, and it was their place. Gordy Clay's another person who had a big impact because all the floods that we had down there, and anybody can go by the Mobile gas station and see the different watermarks there. And I still think the highest one was back July of 1973, and that shouldn't be happening. And as long as Gordy had cigarettes, we knew the PE Center was going to be saved. But if he ran out of cigarettes, somebody was going to get him cigarettes right away, or we were in deep trouble. But again, that was just one of those little nuances that just popped into my head.
Now, you were always a PAT, is that correct? Or were
Correct.
You? Yeah, okay. So you were involved in an awful lot of different aspects of campus government, both as a student and then as an employee. Any particular time or events or things that stand out? I mean, you did all kinds of different things.
I think that as a student, just to be able to attend and be an accepted vocal member of the President's Council was very, very important. It was a process that had been evolving, and I think that in 73, 74, it got to the point where President Hyde could see the value in it, and my being that position and be able to go down and speak to Governor Thompson on behalf of all those types of things, I think that brought new respect to student government on campus. Same thing in the residence halls, being involved with that, being involved in the radio station. My voice was one that was known because every Sunday night I played Goldie Oldies to Stanley McRatfink. And so the crowd, students would listen to that, and then the radio station right there at Silver Hall, that gave us a connection. Stevie Valancourt, who did sports down there, and then covered him for basketball, whatever. He and I connected, and we did a lot off that. I think as a student body president, it was important to listen to the students, and we had a number of different, not forums, but sessions where if students had something, they'd come, we'd sit down, talk to them, then see how we could move forward on those aspects of it. Then, when I was in Hall Dorm and the college apartments, I think it was again pretty much the same thing. The students knew that with the government system that we had in Hall, or the city council we had over in the student apartments, that the students knew that if there was an issue, they could come to me and we'd find a way to work with whomever it was, be it Jim Smith or Dick Hage, to get the problem at least understood. It might not always be able to solve as quickly as we would like, but at least the powers to be understood what the problem was, and in my opinion honestly said, we will see what we can do about it. Sometimes it'd be fixed within 2 hours, sometimes it might take a little bit longer. And then when I worked here at the athletic department, to me it was just a fun place. We always had great grounds attendants who kept the fields in good condition, and again, the student workers were the ones who made it work. We had the greeter to greet the visiting teams, we had the ball people in soccer, field hockey, we had the people running the scoreboard, we had sports information directors, John Garner, Mike Moffett, Ken Charrington, I'm probably forgetting somebody there, but everything was for the students, and I think the students understood that, and those who worked, they appreciated the opportunity to be considered a student ambassador, a viable worker, and when families would come to the PE Center, whoever the student worker at the front desk was, they were the ones who always gave the tours, because I felt it was very important for a family or a student to come. Talk to the students. I get paid to tell you that Plymouth State College is a great place. And then when they get done, I'd say, do you have any questions? And 99% of, that student Kim was super. She answered all our questions. And that's what I wanted because of the fact that if the students bought in, then it would be easier for the visiting parents and prospective students to buy in. So I think it was just, I've been very fortunate, there's no doubt about that.
And as a PAT, the PAT Senate that you were involved in had a lot of different celebrations and fundraising.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that back in the 70s and 80s and 90s and early 2000s, the operating staff and the PATs, professional administrators, took a lot of pride in our jobs. We were families. And so if the operating staff was running some type of fundraiser, the PATs individually would make sure, well, I'm going to buy that from the secretary, administrative assistant, because we're all part of the team. And I think that meant a lot to the operating staff because of the fact that they might not have got paid as much as PATs did. And when we would run our fundraisers, it was the same thing. They'd come, we'd have different functions, the Summerfest, it used to be on the lawn in front of the Hartman Union. It was a great opportunity for everybody to get together in a summer, let their hair hang down and just sort of enjoy each other for what each brought to the campus.
And you named the cookie jar committee. Remember the cookie jar fund?
Yes, yes. I don't
And
really.
from that, we developed the cookbook.
Yep.
And raised quite a bit of money.
And again, I think the PAT cookbook was great because of the fact it was again an opportunity for a member of the PAT to do something that that person enjoyed doing, putting it together for the PATs as a fundraiser. And you were the person who did that. But it took a lot of time and effort on your part, and then people enjoyed it. And then every once in a while, oh no, we got another cookbook we gotta buy, here's another $10 or whatever. But it was said.
$5.
$5, okay, inflation. But it was said in a good way because everybody knew that the effort you put in to make sure that the macaroni cheese was the right one, or the chicken Alfredo, whatever it might have been, was good. And those are the little things I think as time has progressed, the campus may not be doing now as much as they did before. I think that's unfortunate because I don't know if it's as close as it used to be as a family.
Changes that I think what you just mentioned is one of the big ones. The change in the campus community, having been a family back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Anything that stands out that we've learned from our past that could help people today that are working?
I wonder if we have learned from the past. Because of the fact, I think back then, and again, I haven't been here for 12 years, but I've stayed connected with certain people, and I just think that we became a university for certain reasons. Whether they were beneficial or not, that's for other people to decide. But I think that with the advent of social media and whatnot, I don't think our public relations is as much out there as it used to be. There always used to be things in the, and not necessarily the Plymouth Record of the Enterprise, but in the Union Leader. And, excuse me, I don't see stuff in the paper that much. I know that we just recently had a teacher in a foreign country got some award for being a graduate of here and gone on and been dean or principal at some school in European or African, which is great, but I'd like to see more of that. And the same thing in athletics. Very little is in the newspaper in athletics, and I may be prejudiced, but most of the time the positive stuff, it's in newspapers, is a sports section. And because it's talking about wins or losses, but it's not it. The late Chief Justice Earl Warren often said that when he got up in the morning, he would read the sports section first, because the sports section talked about man's successes, the front page talked about man's failures. And I think that's true today, that you open up the front page of a paper, and I think that's too bad because of the fact that if a youngster or a person who doesn't really read newspapers goes on social media, they look at what they want to look at. Oh, there's a story I'm interested in. They don't see the big picture. I still read the paper every day, and I read the front page. Okay, that's interesting. I'll read that story. I'm not interested in that one. Second page. So I feel I am better prepared for what's going on in the world because I see the big picture. I see what the unions are doing. I see what's going on here, and I can form my own opinions. Where in this day and age, I don't think the young people and recent graduates have the same understanding of the global picture. I think it's very tunnel vision based on what they're interested in and who their friends are on Facebook and how they all agree or disagree with them.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to share? Check your many notes.
I think I've pretty much. I was, fortunate to be a PAT speaker. I was fortunate to be the student body president. Again, I think I've been very fortunate in my professional career, both here at Plymouth in the fire department, at Plymouth High School, and at Newfound, to feel good about myself when I retired. I think you can always get involved in the community. and I was involved in the campus community as well as the town community with the fire department, the police department, the park and rec department. I think those are the things that, at least when I go to bed at night or when I think about my professional life, I feel pretty good about it. And I just hope that the students in this day and age and the younger staff members here, faculty, PATs, operating staff, realize the potential, and hopefully maybe they can get back to some of the potential that we had back in the good old days.
And it's also nice to see, for those of us that know you, when we see you recognized as an award recipient or on the Channel 9 News or something.
Thanks.
It's good stuff that we see, and we know that, you know, you got your start at Plymouth State.
And again, I've been fortunate that way. When I get involved in something, I go all in, and that means extra work and whatnot. But again, I'm a firm believer that work isn't bad, and that if something means something to me, then I'm going to do everything I can to help that group. Down at Newfound, when I was there, a lot of the students in this day and age, it's different than it was when we were, and they have a lot of outside issues that oftentimes teachers don't see. But in athletics, in a math class, it's okay, bell rang, do chapter 1 tomorrow.
Right.
When in athletics, you get to see the students in a different aspect of it, and they'll come in and see, can I talk to you about it? And some of the stuff they talk about, oh wow, okay, and then they know that I won't give away their names, but I will go and get them whatever help is necessary. And that's one thing I would definitely miss this coming year, because the fact that I know that there are a number of students who counted on being able to come in, shut the door, and just let loose however they wanted to do. And you know, they know that I'll be around this year for that too. But again, I can't say enough. I've been very fortunate professionally. I've had people who supported me. When people didn't support me, they would at least have the confidence to come up and say, hey Pete, we disagree with this, here's why, and we get into a good dialogue, but it's not yelling and screaming and ranting and raving, it's because we have respect for each other. And I think that's another thing back, you know, when there was Plymouth State College and back in those days, people respected each other, and then their opinions were different. Now it seems like the opinion is more important than the person, and I think that's not good for America.
There's a lot of things that aren't good right now.
Right. Yep.
So, we're about at the end of our time, so I want to thank you very much for coming, and your stories are just wonderful to hear, and all about the student. And
That was the way it's brought up. It's about the students, be it here at Plymouth State or Newfound. The students are what we're all here working for. It's not to make a dollar or whatever, it's for the students, because they're the future. Exactly, they're the future. And I think we turned out okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.